Hello everyone, today I'll continue sharing with you the story of a young woman named Lytusan. I hope you'll enjoy this video. After officially moving into Tusan's husband's house, Lynn, his cunning mistress, became increasingly brazen and shameless. Now holding the powerful position of the future grandson's mother in the household, she began to reveal her true ambition, to divide, manipulate, and seize control. Lynn knew very well that relying on the husband's affection alone wasn't enough to drive Tusan out. The real person she needed to win over was Tusan's mother-in-law, the one who held the real power in the family. At first, Lynn cleverly poisoned the mother-in-law's mind with subtle, malicious gossip about Tusan, dripping like venom into her ears. "Mother, I don't think Tusan, is really sincere with you. She acts obedient in front of you, but I've heard people say she complains about you behind your back. She keeps sneaking out these days. I guess she doesn't care about this house anymore." Sweet words, skillfully wrapped in fake concern, slowly swayed the mother-in-law's heart. She had already been prejudiced against Tusan for giving birth to a daughter. Hearing Lynn's insinuations only made her more susceptible to manipulation. But Lynn didn't stop there. She played an even more sophisticated move, winning over the mother-in-law with material pleasures and emotional flattery. She took the old woman to fancy restaurants, bought her new clothes, and even treated her to expensive spa and beauty treatments, things Tusan could never afford, being busy with her child and financially limited. Each time, Lynn would flatter her sweetly. "Mother, you need to take care of yourself. You're the grandmother of the future heir, you should be elegant and radiant so he'll be proud of you." Hearing this made the mother-in-law beam with pride, feeling elevated in status. She gradually grew fond of Lynn, even treating her like a beloved daughter and bragging to the neighbors. "This is the mother of our family's future grandson." Meanwhile, Lynn carefully crafted her image as the perfect, filial, well-mannered woman in front of others. Tusan, exhausted from raising her young daughter and enduring constant unfair treatment, became quieter and more withdrawn. Every attempt she made to explain herself was twisted by Lynn's prior manipulations, sowing deeper distress. Lynn also seized every chance to slander Tusan to her husband, spinning lies to make Tusan seem selfish and uncaring, while portraying herself as gentle and self-sacrificing for the sake of their unborn son. Step by step, Lynn won over the mother-in-law's heart, shook the husband's trust, and inched closer to her ultimate goal, forcing Tusan to leave on her own. At night, Tusan would sit alone in her small room, listening to the sound of laughter from the living room, where Lynn and her mother-in-law returned from their joyful outings. She felt like a shadow in the very home she had worked so hard to build. The mother-in-law had long harbored prejudice. To her, Tusan was the daughter-in-law who couldn't bear a son, a burden to the family, someone who brought no pride. So when Lynn whispered her poisonous words, that resentment didn't fade, it exploded. She began nitpicking Tusan over the smallest things, the way she cooked, cared for her child, cleaned the house, even the tone she used when speaking. Any slight mistake would trigger loud scolding, as if she was waiting for an excuse to humiliate her. But what truly enraged her was Tusan's monthly salary. Despite raising her child, Tusan still worked to earn a modest income to support her daughter and contribute to household expenses. That money was the fruit of her hard labor and her last shred of independence in this unfair marriage. The mother-in-law, however, believed that once a daughter-in-law married in, everything, including her earnings, should belong to the husband's family. She would often hint, a daughter-in-law's salary should be given to her mother-in-law to keep. That's proper tradition. Women who keep their own money are troublemakers. Tusan stayed silent. She knew that if she handed the money over, not a single cent would be saved for her daughter, it would all be spent on Lynn and her unborn child. The real trigger came from a financial agreement between Tusan and her husband. When he first wanted Lynn to move in, Tusan reluctantly agreed, but on one strict condition. Backhand index pointing right, she would keep full control over her salary. If he didn't accept this, she would not allow Lynn into the house. Desperate to bring Lynn in, her husband had agreed, as a temporary compromise. But this condition became a thorn in the mother-in-law's side. She plotted with Lynn to pressure Tusan into handing over her salary, even telling her son, You can't let her keep the money. Who's the real head of this house? If this goes on, she and that little girl will end up owning everything. The husband, torn between pleasing his mother and avoiding a fight with Tearful San, chose to remain passive. When the mother-in-law learned the full details of the agreement, she was furious. In her eyes, Tearful San was now a defiant daughter-in-law who dared to set conditions and hold on to money, while the future heir's mother Lin was being pampered. She snapped during a heated argument. You selfish woman. Living under your husband's roof but keeping your own money, ungrateful. But no matter how angry she was, she couldn't act rashly. Her own son had accepted the deal, and pushing too hard could cause Tearful San to retaliate and ruin Lin's position in the house. So she swallowed her anger and looked for other ways to tip the scales, while Lin continued to manipulate her emotions to divide the family further. Meanwhile, an even darker scheme was taking shape outside the house, orchestrated by Lin's real lover, the man she referred to as her business partner. Few knew that this man was actually her partner in crime and real boyfriend. From the start, Lin's relationship with Tearful San's husband was never about love, it was part of a carefully calculated plan to seize the family's wealth. The man was a shrewd con artist, experienced in running fraudulent high-return investment schemes. He knew the family had substantial savings and that the mother-in-law, trusting her son completely, would be willing to release the funds if she believed it was for the family's future. Lin and her lover planned everything. She would persuade the husband and mother-in-law to invest in a fake golden opportunity he set up. Once the money was transferred, they would both disappear without a trace, leaving the family bankrupt and broken. Lin began subtly planting the idea with the husband. Honey, I have a close friend working on a promising project. Many have joined already, double returns in just a few months. If you seize this chance, our son's future will be secure forever. Eager to prove himself to his mother and already under Lin's spell, the husband was easily hooked. Soon, Lin arranged a formal meeting between her lover and the husband. The man arrived dressed sharply, spoke persuasively, and presented a convincing investment plan, complete with fake, successful investors to boost credibility. The husband fell for it completely. The only problem was that he didn't have enough money. The largest portion of the family's savings was held by the mother-in-law, a lifetime's worth of accumulated wealth, reserved for her future grandson. Lin stepped in again. She became more attentive than ever, cooking for the mother-in-law, pampering her, and whispering daily. Mother, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to give your grandson the bright future he deserves. You'll never have to worry again. Blinded by pride and her affection for Lin, the mother-in-law eagerly agreed. She even suggested withdrawing all the family's savings for the investment. Every last cent, family savings and borrowed money, was transferred to the fake investment account. The family believed they were on the verge of striking gold. Only Tearful San felt uneasy. Though marginalized, she caught fragments of their conversations and sensed something was wrong. When she spoke up, both her husband and mother-in-law dismissed her sharply. What do you know about investing? Just stay home and take care of your daughter. Don't meddle in adult matters. No one listened. No one checked. And no one realized they were walking straight into a trap. Lin and her lover were merely waiting for the money to clear before vanishing, leaving behind a family torn apart and financially ruined. Lin's scheme seemed to be unfolding perfectly, but what she didn't expect was that her own arrogance would create the fatal flaw. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Tearful San went to the kitchen to get some water for her daughter. There, she accidentally overheard Lin's late-night phone conversation with her lover. Lin's voice was low but brimming with smug satisfaction, accompanied by chilling bursts of laughter. Yeah, the money's about to be transferred. The old lady believes every word, and that fool thinks he's about to become some big businessman. Once the money's in the account, we're gone. And that woman, Tearful San, she'll be out of the house soon. Tearful San froze behind the door, her heart pounding wildly. She didn't even dare to breathe. Each sentence cut into her like a knife. In that moment, everything became clear. Lin had never been sincere toward anyone in this family. Everything was just a calculated plan to drain their assets and disappear. But what sent shivers down Tearful San's spine even more was what happened next. After hanging up, Lynn suddenly turned around. Their eyes met. In that split second, Tearful San knew she'd been caught. Lynn didn't panic. On the contrary, she smirked, her gaze cold and arrogant. So, you heard everything. So what? Tearful San tried to keep her composure. I'll tell everyone the truth. Lynn laughed mockingly. And who do you think will believe you? Your dear mother-in-law? Or that idiot husband of yours? To them, you're nothing but a shadow. You could scream yourself hoarse, and no one would believe you. The words hit Tearful San like a bucket of ice water. She knew Lynn wasn't wrong. For so long, her voice in this house had been ignored, twisted, and drowned out by Lynn's manipulations. Realizing her plan had been overheard, Lynn immediately switched to a preemptive strike. She knew that if she could remove Tearful San from the house before the money transfer was complete, nothing would stand in her way. Just a few days later, Lynn set up a cruel trap. She pretended to be remorseful and sweetly invited Tearful San and her daughter to accompany her on a short trip to visit a business friend, claiming she wanted to prove she had nothing to hide. One early morning, Lynn said gently, "Sister Tearful San, why don't you and the little one come with me today? I know you're suspicious of me, so I want to show you there's nothing shady going on." Worried about the family's money, Tearful San reluctantly agreed and brought her daughter along. But as the car drove farther and farther, the scenery grew unfamiliar and desolate. On a deserted road, the driver, hired by Lynn, suddenly stopped. Lynn ordered coldly, "Get out." Tearful San panicked. "What are you doing?" Lynn stepped out, snatched Tearful San's phone, hurled it into a roadside ditch, and said coldly, "Goodbye. Don't bother coming back too soon." The car sped off, leaving Tearful San and her daughter stranded in a strange, isolated place, no acquaintances, no transportation, no phone, just dirt roads and the whispering wind. Meanwhile, back home, Lynn quickly spun a story that Tearful San had run away in anger, taking the child to cause a scene. The mother-in-law believed it immediately, and Tearful San's husband merely sighed, calling her selfish and dramatic. No one even bothered to look for her. Lynn seized this moment to push the final phase of the financial scam. With the household in chaos, everything was falling neatly into place for her and her lover. Out in the unfamiliar countryside, Tearful San held her daughter tightly as tears streamed down her face. She had been trapped perfectly. No money, no phone, no allies, just endless dirt roads, autumn winds, and rising despair. Her little girl began crying from hunger and cold. Tearful San hugged her closer, whispering shakily, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy will find us shelter. I promise." In the first few days, Tearful San desperately searched for work around a small market in the outskirts where she had ended up. She went from food stalls to convenience shops, begging for any kind of help. But each place turned her away when they saw she had a small child with her. "Sorry, we can't hire mothers with kids. Who would watch the child? We need someone full-time. You can't work and babysit at the same time. Young mom, just go home and take care of your kid. This isn't the place for you." The cold rejection sliced through her heart. She grew exhausted, her legs numb from walking, humiliation and helplessness weighing her down. At night, she and her daughter sheltered under an old market awning to keep out the wind and rain. She took off her only thin jacket and wrapped it around her daughter. Her sandals were worn and broken, her feet blistered and cracked from walking, but she didn't complain. One morning, while Tearful San sat slumped in a corner of the market, holding her sleeping daughter, a middle-aged woman selling vegetables noticed them. The woman's clothes were simple, her face tanned from years of hard work, but her eyes shone with kindness. She walked over and gently placed a hand on Tearful San's shoulder. "Young lady, where did you come from? You look like you're going through so much." Too tired to hide anything, Tearful San tearfully shared her story, the betrayal, the trap, being abandoned in a strange place with no money and no work. The woman listened quietly, sighing with deep compassion. Though she wasn't wealthy, the woman went to her stall and brought back a small bag of rice and a pair of old but intact sandals. She handed them to Tearful and said kindly, "This rice will keep you and your child fed for a few days. And these sandals, put them on. It's getting colder. Don't walk barefoot like that, you'll get sick." Tears flowed down Tearful's face as she looked at the rice and sandals. She bowed her head repeatedly in gratitude, choking back sobs. I don't even know how to thank you. I thought the whole world had abandoned me." The woman placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, smiling warmly. "Don't say that. There are still good people in this world. You must stay strong, for your child. If you give up, who will take care of her?" That night, for the first time in days, Tearful and her daughter had a warm meal from the rice, and the sandals spared her aching feet from the cold ground. Though their situation was still dire, a faint glimmer of hope began to flicker in Tearful's weary heart. Looking down at her peacefully sleeping daughter, she whispered softly, "I won't give up. I'll bring you home, and expose every single one of them." Walking and walking. Tearful's legs grew weaker with each step, and the sandals the kind old woman had given her were now covered in dust. The sky was turning orange as the sun set, stretching long shadows across the empty road. A cold wind swept through rows of dry trees, making her shiver. Her little daughter slept fitfully in her arms, her breathing faint from hunger and exhaustion. In the depths of despair, Tearful suddenly spotted an old, abandoned house tucked away beside a narrow path. The roof was sagging, the wooden doors cracked, the walls covered in green moss and tangled vines. It looked like no one had lived there for years. She stood before the creaky wooden door, glancing around nervously, afraid someone might chase her away. But looking down at her frail daughter in her arms, Tearful swallowed hard and gently pushed the door open. Creak, the hinges squealed sharply, echoing into the empty house. Inside, there was no one. The interior was pitch dark, layered with dust. Cobwebs clung to every corner, and broken tiles littered the floor. A gust of wind blew in through the cracks, stirring up clouds of dust that made Tearful cough. But at least, it was shelter. With no other place to go, Tearful whispered softly to her child, as if reassuring both of them. "We'll rest here for now, just a little while. Then Mama will figure something out." She laid her daughter in a relatively dry corner and rolled up her sleeves. Even though her body was worn out after days of hunger and wandering, she stubbornly began cleaning the abandoned house. She used a branch as a makeshift broom, swept away cobwebs, gathered debris, and opened the windows to let sunlight in. Every movement was slow, but determined. Sweat beaded on her forehead, her clothes were covered in grime, yet for the first time in days, her heart felt slightly lighter. At least she had found a temporary roof over their heads. By nightfall, the air turned icy. Tearful built a small fire from dry wood she'd collected nearby. Using the old pot the kind woman had given her, she cooked a thin pot of plain rice porridge with the little rice she had left. The smoke rose gently, casting a warm golden glow over Tearful's thin but resolute face. She stirred the porridge slowly. The smell was simple and poor, but strangely comforting. When the porridge was ready, she scooped some into a small bowl, cooled it down, and carefully fed her daughter spoon by spoon. The child, weak with hunger all day, ate slowly, her eyes fluttering sleepily as she gripped her mother's hand, finally finding a sense of safety. Tearful ate the few remaining spoonfuls herself. Though it was just plain, watery porridge, to her it was the most precious meal she'd had in days. She looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully on an old jacket she had laid on the floor, and a complex wave of emotions washed over her, exhaustion, sorrow, but also a fragile moment of peace. She whispered softly into the dark. "Starting tomorrow, we'll begin again. I promise." Outside, the wind howled through the broken cracks of the house. But inside, amidst the cold and decay, the small fire and the warmth of a mother's love lit a faint spark of hope. In the dark, Tearful laid out a piece of old cardboard on the cold ground as a makeshift bed. No blankets, no mattress, just the flimsy cardboard to lie on and cover themselves with. She gently laid her daughter on her arm, curled her body around her, and pulled the cardboard over them. The chill pierced through the thin layer, making her shiver uncontrollably, but she held her daughter tighter, trying to share her body warmth. The little girl instinctively nestled closer, her tiny hands gripping her mother's shirt as if afraid to be left alone. Her innocent face looked peaceful in sleep, a stark contrast to her young mother's weary, gaunt face, tired but still burning with determination. Tearful San looked up at the crumbling ceiling, through which she could glimpse a sky full of stars. She bit her lip to stop herself from crying out loud, afraid to wake her child. Inside, all her bitterness, humiliation, and fear tangled into a painful knot in her chest. "My dear. I'm sorry. I can't give you the warm home other children have. But I won't give up. We will survive. We'll go back. I promise," she whispered, her voice trembling in the darkness. The night air grew colder. The cardboard did little to shield them, but Tearful San could only tighten her embrace, using her body heat to keep her child warm. The two of them huddled together on the damp floor, surrounded by the vast, endless night. In that moment, loneliness, hardship, and a mother's love intertwined, creating a scene both heartbreaking and deeply moving. Even when cornered by life, Tearful San remained resilient, like a fragile candle in the wind, weak, but never extinguished.
Hello, xin chào mọi người. Rất vui được gặp lại mọi người trong video của mình nha. Hiện tại thì kênh của mình đang kể về câu chuyện của người mẹ Lý Tiểu San. Thì hành trình của Lý Tiểu San bắt đầu từ khi cô bị nhà chồng đuổi ra khỏi nhà bởi âm mưu của nhân tình của người phụ nữ tên Linh. Sau khi bị đuổi khỏi nhà thì Tiểu San phải lang thang khắp nơi cùng con vì cô không có tiền, cũng chẳng có gì trong tay. Thậm chí chiếc điện thoại duy nhất của cô cũng không còn để liên lạc về cho người thân. Vậy là Tiểu San phải bắt đầu từ bàn tay trắng cùng con lang thang khắp nơi. Liệu những khó khăn và những gian khổ phía trước có làm Tiểu San gục ngã hay không thì mời mọi người đón xem ở video tiếp theo nha. Rất mong được sự ủng hộ của mọi người. Cảm ơn mọi người đã xem hết video ngày hôm nay. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại mọi người.